Red flags to look out for in child predators. Number one, they prefer the company of children and young adults over adults. At events, they'll prefer to hang out with the youth and entertain the youth versus hanging out with the adults. They find ways to spend time alone with the child, or sometimes they'll even go to the extent to invite the child to sleep over. And most of the time, they don't have no damn kids. They provide favors, gifts, trips, affection, attention to a specific child out of a group. Or if you're a single mother, they'll tell you they have a favorite child. They're constantly hugging, patting, kissing, touching children, even when the child is clearly showing that they do not want to be touched on or kissed. And then the parent turns around and will tell them that they're being rude and to kiss the predator. You're making your child gaslight themselves and go against their discernment and go against their body. Your stomach don't always tell you when you're hungry. They provide items of interest such as video games, basketballs, Barbies, anything you can name it. It goes back to the gift giving. They'll say little weird stuff like them and the child share a lot of similar interests, or that they are fond of each other or have a special relationship. Predators are not strangers in a creepy, eerie white van with candy in their hand. Predators aren't only homosexuals, because I've heard that myth. Another myth that all predators used to be sexually abused as a child, that's also a myth. Another myth is that sexual predators are identifiable, and they're not. These are some of the signs of a sexual predator or a pedophile, and these are some of the myths that go along with the topic. Just be mindful of who you have your children around and teach them about their body, boundaries, and saying no. And if you choose to be a parent, be a parent. There's a lot of sacrifices that come with it, and sometimes you're not going to have a village, and that is okay. But you never want to have people around your children that will groom them to be abused. Y'all stay blessed.
Here are some signs of a groomer. So send this to your young ones so they can be aware of who's a groomer, who's trying to groom them. Let's go. Number one, and I mentioned it on one of my last videos, too much attention too fast, love bombing, red flag. Any grown-ass man that's trying to build a secret bond with you, or is trying to make you feel chosen or special, groomer, red flag. Any grown-ass man that start pushing boundaries. How does this look like? I'm going to give you an example because I went through this, okay? They'll start asking you, they'll start gaining your trust first, doing silly jokes and things like that to gain your trust. And then eventually, when nobody's looking or nobody's around, they'll start asking you personal sexual questions every single time to try to invade into your personal life. That's a groomer. Any grown-ass man or woman, because groomers could be women too, y'all dirty, that tries to isolate you, that tries to talk to you too much about trying to put people against you, that you know that they're really not affecting you in any way, or they'll try to come up with pointing out maybe silly stuff, like if you got into a fight with your parents, they'll start telling you negative things about your parents to pin you against your parents. That's a groomer. That's not a person that is giving you advice. That's a person that's trying to isolate you. It could be your parents or trying to pin you against your friends or anybody that is actually there for you. That's a groomer. Use discernment. Another one is making inappropriate conversations seem very normal, or inappropriate touching seem like it's very normal. They'll do it once. And if you don't say anything, they'll test you out again. They'll do it again. The first time that any grown-ass man attempts to inappropriately do any of these things, run and tell your mama, tell your daddy, okay? That's a fucking weirdo. You run and you cut it right off the bat. Like I said on my previous video, confidence will save you from a lot of things. So if you speak up, even if your voice shakes, listen to me. Because in those moments, you're going to get a lot of anxiety. God forbid, none of y'all have to go through any of this, honestly. But for the people that have had similar situations or have gone through something like that, it's traumatic to the body because it comes very unexpectedly. You have to be aware. You're going to have a very harsh gut feeling. You're going to shiver. You're going to feel very uncomfortable in your own body. That moment, listen to me, and I tell this to my kids all of the time. If God forbid this ever happens to you, right in that moment where you start having these feelings, that is when you have to react. That is the moment that your alarm, your bell, has to go off. That's when you react. It don't matter how you look like. It don't matter if they try to intimidate you. It don't matter how it look like. That's the moment that you react. That right there. I hope this helps.
Here are some signs of grooming behavior that can be important to become aware of, but also to talk to children about. The first one, special gifts, special attention. Often this person will kind of be singled out to start to feel special and different. Beyond gift giving, it could look like getting more praise than others or more one-to-one time. Another one is testing physical boundaries, and this can also look like in public, but they're going to kind of figure out ways in which they can test those boundaries and see how the kid handles that level of discomfort. That could look like tickling, wrestling, hugs. Another one is treating the child as though they were older, so praising them and telling them that they seem older, or offering things like alcohol and stuff as though they were older and they can handle it. They'll often find ways to isolate the child so they can get more one-to-one time. Another one is trying to find a role to fill for this child. So especially if there's a missing family role, that's an easy way to kind of fill in a role. Lastly, their persona is often around being around children a lot. So it's very normal that they would be around a lot of kids.
If you're a parent, you must watch this video. I'm going to explain what grooming is and then share some insight from a former FBI agent. He's going to break down the warning signs that parents need to watch out for. Grooming is a trust-building process by an individual who is looking to exploit you down the line. And most of the time, this typically takes place on various social media apps or online.
Moms and dads, you need to know the red flags that tell you your child is being groomed by an online sexual predator. Obviously, kids spend a lot of time online, but you need to be aware of any activity spikes that seem unusual even for a teen or a preteen. I hope you regularly ask your kids who they're talking to online. And if their response is avoidance or switching screens or putting their phone away so you can't see it, that's a problem. Groomers will often send their victims gifts. So if your child suddenly has new toys or electronic devices, you didn't buy them, it's time to start asking questions. If your child starts using sexually explicit language they shouldn't know at their age, that's another conversation you need to have. Finally, sexual predators are master manipulators and know how to drive a wedge between children and their parents. So mood swings that can be tied to increased online activity, you guessed it, another red flag. Bottom line, know what your kids are doing online and who they're doing it with. And if that means no notice inspections of their devices, so be it.
Educate yourself, educate your kids, and make sure that you have an open line of communication. Make sure that your child knows that they could come to you for anything and everything. Be their safe space. The online world is a wild place to be these days, and as parents, it's our job to keep our kids safe. Be aware of the warning signs and act early. I have a degree in criminology and psychology, and I share daily safety tips. Be sure to give me a follow, and as always, stay safe out there.
I want to talk about marriage and insults because I can remember very clearly the very first time, maybe a year or two into my relationships with both my husbands during both of my marriages, and I think even before we were married, we were having a disagreement and I got called a bitch. And I immediately thought, wow, this is escalating. That was number one. And number two, I had never been called that before by a partner. In the first marriage, no. In the second marriage, obviously I had. So my point is that it was emotionally hurtful. I didn't know how to respond. And it was obviously moving to a place where I was being attacked, insulted. And those moments stand out to me as important times in which I should have ended both relationships on the spot. Here's why. What that person was demonstrating wasn't just a one-off, not listening or being defensive in a discussion. It was a true capacity to escalate. And where could it go from there? I found out because it went much farther in both of my marriages. So my point is this: for every woman who is in a relationship that seems fine, if you are being insulted and called names, it's not fine. And for any woman who is not in a relationship and has never been called names like that, you will be at some point. And that is the only cue you need to leave. Don't try to see his side of it. Don't try to explain it away for him. You are with a person who doesn't think twice to insult you when he doesn't want to be accountable. He will not hesitate to do this over and over again and escalate even further over time, guaranteed. Because here is the inevitable thing. When you ask not to be insulted, the next thing out of his mouth, of a man who says you're a bitch, when you ask him not to call you names, will be, then stop acting like one. And we all know that's not an appropriate answer. What that answer says is that my safety is now contingent upon not expressing myself. Women, do not put up with that, not even once. The moment that happens, you need to leave. Don't try to work it out, just leave.
Have you ever met a colleague at work, or a new boss, a VP, just a coworker, and something didn't sit right in your stomach, but everyone around you said, no, that's just who they are, that's just their personality? Go with your gut, because your instinct is telling you something. My name is Nicole. I'm an investigator, and 48 hours ago, I posted a video on TikTok asking if the world knew anything about grooming at work and what predatory behavior at work might look like. And I got a resounding, please help. So here we are. I will be doing a series on what predatory behavior at work might look like and what grooming in the workplace can look like. So I want to do a trigger warning. The following content may not be easy to hear. It will involve discussions regarding sexual harassment and sexual assault. So I'm going to give a pause, let everyone keep scrolling who needs to keep scrolling, and then we'll continue on. As an investigator, when I'm meeting with multiple employees and they're doing their one-on-one sessions with me, and we're talking about a specific individual, and I'm asking them questions, have they ever made you uncomfortable? Have they ever said anything that, was of XYZ nature? And I get the response, well, yeah, they'll crack the occasional joke, or, sometimes, but honestly, that's just their personality. They're always like that. They do that with everybody. They don't mean any harm. That is a tool that is called conditioning, and it is used by individuals who exhibit predatory behavior. Now, I'm not saying that they are predators,
but I'm saying that I identify that as predatory behavior. And as an investigator, that's a giant fucking red flag for me. So when they try to make their borderline inappropriate commentary, conversations, compliments seem natural, and as a personality trait, that tells me that something's wrong. And when I hear other people describe their personality as borderline inappropriate, that's when I dig deeper.